Green architecture. This is activity 2.3.2, and we are dealing with green building and sustainable design as we begin to move into our affordable housing project. A big part of this is to consider what can we do to maintain our environment and be mindful for future generations upcoming. And that's really the goal about this activity, is to get us to think about those elements and what can we do in a house design to incorporate that. So just the introduction here: green building design and sustainable architecture are reshaping the practices and the products of modern construction and are providing solutions that balance environmental, social, and economic benefits. We'll consider things like climate change and the concerns, a sense for stewardship for the earth, and how they're motivating the use of green building products and sustainable techniques. Energy use in buildings is increasing and could continue to rise. And by using new sustainable methods, materials, and mechanical components, architects and engineers are able to create structures that curb that trend. A sustainable building design reduces pressure on the environment by decreasing energy use and reducing the consumption of water and preserving natural resources, as well as reducing the pollution and the life cycle of the buildings. Um, I'm not going to go any further with the intro. You can read through that on your own. But the gist of this is we're going to get into what can we consider to do to our houses? What can we rethink about processes as we start designing a house? So I will take you through a quick PowerPoint to introduce you to these concepts a little bit. In this activity, basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to do a little bit of research to figure out what exactly is this green building and sustainable architecture and how can we incorporate this. So some of the topics here are: what is sustainability, what is green building, sustainable design, sustainable building design, preservation of natural conditions, human comfort, sustainable building life cycle, pre-building phase, the building phase, the post-building phase, and finally sustainable remodeling of things. So what is sustainability? Kind of the big philosophy behind the whole thing: it's meeting the needs of the of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Another way I like to look at it is continue to do the same things over and over. If we continue to do the same things over and over, what impact will that have on future generations? Can we continue to make everything out of lumber? Or do we need to start considering recycling some products to make it so we have trees for the next generation? We know trees are more than just shade, but they can help us with our breathing, with air, with construction materials, and so on. It's a principle of intergenerational equity. We don't own the earth; we hold it and trust it for our children. So we want to leave the earth in such a way that our next generations and their next generations have something left to work with, as previous generations have done for us. And how do we implement that? Basically, five big areas. We think about the human element, the environmental, the social, financial, and then the manufactured. So green building, what are we talking about? Planning, designing, construction, operations, and end of life recycling of structures. Think of solutions that represent a healthy dynamic and a balance between environmental, social, and economic benefits. And then the kind of the triple bottom line, if you will. Think of the long-term assessment of things. Is it the best practice for us, for people, for our planet, and then for making money or saving money? Sustainable design has three things in mind: a healthy environment, a vibrant economy, and then equitable society. Is it good for all of us? So if we think of a sustainable building design, according to the whole building design guide, we want to optimize site potential, optimize energy use, protect and conserve water, optimize building space and materials, enhance indoor environmental quality, and optimize operational and maintenance practices. As we start to do a building process or building project, we want to think about, can we preserve some of nature? If we've got beautiful trees or flowing hillsides and so on, should we consider reusing that? So an architect should minimize the impact of a building on its local ecosystem. In other words, can we use the existing land use the existing plants and wildlife, or should we come in and bulldoze the entire lot, get a perfectly flat lot, and start from scratch? I think the thinking on that has changed over the years. We want to do more and more to preserve what we have. If we have a beautiful grove of trees, perhaps we should leave that and try and utilize that, plan that into our project that we're making. Thinking of human comforts, a building's design should enhance the work and home environments. Of course, we want it to be comfortable where we live and where we work, where we play, things like that. This can improve productivity, can reduce stress, and positively, in fact, affect our health and our well-being. When we think about the sustainable building life cycle, it's pre-building, okay, before we even start building. And then we talk about the building process. What all goes into that? What can we do as we're building to maintain and consider the environment around us? And finally, the post-building, when we're all done and maybe we have to tear something down and do some remodeling. So we have to consider all three of those phases. First one, the pre-building, and we've touched on this a little bit already. The site selection, maybe the building design. How can we make it fit in with the environment, the surroundings? If you look at the picture in front of you, you can kind of see the pine trees in the back, and thinking of, can we utilize them for shade, for a windbreak, for just the natural beauty, to maintain some of nature for the animals that are around before we start moving in and start building things. Examine the environmental consequences, that if we just build, what's it going to do to the environment around us? Think about the orientation of the house, south being where the sun is. Should we think about that? Can we orient this in such a way that we can utilize what's already there? Think about the landscape. Do we have to totally incorporate brand new landscape, or can we use some of the existing elements that are there? Think of our building phase. That's basically the construction operations and the processes. Can we do things to reduce the environmental impact of the things going on as we're building? What's the long-term effect of a building and the environment and its occupants, and how that's going to work with us? The post-building phase, old materials become resources for other buildings, perhaps, or are they waste? They get returned to nature. The sustainable design strategy focuses on reducing construction waste by perhaps recycling and reusing. So we know that plastics take a long, long time to recycle. So if we can use more natural, biodegradable materials, if we can use some materials that maybe we can use and recycle, these are all good things that help us as we think about the life cycle of a building. And then finally, think about sustainable remodeling. We all live in a home of some sort, and perhaps you've been through some rebuilding processes, maybe some remodeling processes. Can they be remodeled, or do we have to tear them down? Can we reuse some of the elements that are already there, or do we have to continually, completely remove and replace them? So thinking about that, and then thinking of a bigger picture, if we remodel, can we do things to make things greener, make things better? When you remodel a home, can you use some recycled materials versus always using brand new materials? I did a remodel about a year and a half ago and chose to use some recycled window trim. I've used some recycled barnwood for a number of things that I've done. So reusing materials rather than always getting brand new can be very helpful. So that gives you a quick overview of the green building and sustainable architecture as we try and think about all of these elements as we start designing and planning for our construction process. So that gives you a bit of an overview. Your assignment here, you're going to do a little bit of research into this, and I'll have an assignment here, but it gives you questions like: rainfall falls on most parcels of property throughout the world. Describe one method that could be used to collect this natural resource. So you're going to have to dig into that a little bit and come up with some ideas that might help us with green, going green, being sustainable. So a number of a few questions there, plus a couple conclusion questions to get you to dig into this just a little bit, and then consider how can we implement that into our house design. So that is your overview of activity 2.3.2 and the PowerPoint for building, green building and sustainable design. Thanks, guys, and see you soon.